They say everyone has a price. That moment when desperation meets opportunity and you make a choice that changes everything. Mine was $500,000. $500,000 to pretend to be someone's wife for 12 months, to smile at family dinners, to attend business galas, to play the role of the devoted spouse. The catch? He was Korean, devastatingly handsome, incredibly powerful, and absolutely, completely, terrifyingly dangerous. Oh, and one more thing. I wasn't supposed to fall in love with him. I definitely wasn't supposed to get pregnant. My name is Ngozi Okafor. I'm 26 years old from Lagos, Nigeria. And this is the story of how a fake marriage contract with a Korean mafia boss became the most real thing in my life. Before we start, if you're new here, please hit that like button and subscribe because this story gets wild. And trust me, you'll want to see where this goes. Let's go back to the beginning. Back to the moment I was so desperate, so broken, so completely out of options that I said yes to the most insane proposal of my life. New York City. 3 years after I'd left Lagos with dreams of making it as a graphic designer in America. Reality? I was drowning. $180,000 in debt. Student loans from art school that I'd never be able to pay off. Credit card debt from trying to survive in the most expensive city in the world. And every month I was sending money back home to Lagos, to my mother, my younger siblings, my grandmother. Because that's what you do when you're the oldest daughter. You sacrifice, you provide, you don't complain. I was working 3 jobs. Waitress at an upscale Manhattan restaurant where the customers spent more on one meal than I made in a week. Freelance graphic designer taking any project I could find. And retail at a boutique in Soho where I sold clothes I could never afford to wear. I was exhausted. Constantly. The kind of tired that settles into your bones and never leaves. It was a Tuesday night in March when everything changed. I was working the late shift at Luminescence, this ridiculously expensive restaurant in Midtown where celebrities and business moguls came to be seen. The kind of place where a single appetizer cost $60 and the wine list read like a mortgage payment. I'd been on my feet for 11 hours. My back ached. My smile was starting to crack. I had exactly $47 in my bank account, and rent was due in 5 days. Then they walked in. 3 Korean men in suits that probably cost more than my entire year's salary. 2 of them were clearly security. Broad shoulders, alert eyes, positioned protectively. But the one in the middle, oh God, he was beautiful in a way that made you forget to breathe. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that seemed to see everything. Hair styled perfectly. He moved like someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. Like he owned not just the room, but the entire building, possibly the whole block. They were seated in my section. Of course they were. "Good evening, gentlemen," I said, pulling out my professional smile, the one I'd perfected after thousands of shifts. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" The 2 security guys barely looked at me. But him? He looked up from the menu, and those dark eyes locked onto mine. For 3 full seconds, the entire restaurant seemed to disappear. "Whiskey?" he said. His English was perfect, with just the slightest accent that made every word sound deliberate. "Macallan 25, neat." "Excellent choice," I said, writing it down even though I'd remember. "You don't forget a $150 whiskey order." The dinner went smoothly. They spoke in Korean, voices low and intense. Business, clearly. The kind of business that required private dining rooms and security details. I didn't ask questions. In this restaurant, you learned quickly that discretion was worth more than curiosity. I brought their drinks, took their orders, served their food. The man in the middle, the beautiful, dangerous one, watched me each time I approached. Not in a creepy way. More like he was solving a puzzle, figuring something out. When I brought the check, he said, "You're tired." It wasn't a question. I blinked, caught off guard. "I'm fine, sir. Is there anything else I can get you?" "How many jobs do you work?" Now I was really uncomfortable. I don't think... 3, he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. Probably more. You have that look. Exhausted, but determined. Drowning, but still swimming. How the hell did he know that? I should get your change, I said, reaching for the black leather folder he'd placed a credit card in. Keep it. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. The 2 security guys immediately flanked him. All of it. I glanced at the bill. The meal had been nearly $2,000. If he was telling me to keep all of it as a tip... Sir, I can't. You can. He pulled a business card from his pocket, placed it on the table. If you're interested in a better opportunity, one that would solve all your problems, call that number. Ask for Mr. Shin. Then he walked out, leaving me standing there with a business card in one hand and a credit card receipt showing a $3,000 tip in the other. $3,000. I stared at the card. Heavy stock, minimalist design, just a phone number and a name. K. Shin, private consultant. My manager, Marcus, appeared at my elbow. Holy shit, Ngozi. Did he just... Yeah, I whispered. What did he want? I have no idea. But that was a lie, because there was something about the way he'd looked at me, the way he'd known I was desperate, the way he'd left that card like a test. He wanted something. And God help me, I was desperate enough to find out what. I didn't call for 3 days. 3 days of staring at that business card. 3 days of trying to convince myself that whatever opportunity Mr. Shin was offering, it couldn't possibly be legitimate. Rich men didn't just hand out $3,000 tips and job offers to struggling waitresses. That wasn't how the world worked. Except my landlord didn't care about my suspicions. The debt collectors didn't care. My mother's texts from Lagos asking if I could send extra money this month because my brother needed school supplies, those didn't care either. On Friday afternoon, sitting in my tiny studio apartment in Queens, staring at another past due notice, I picked up my phone. The call connected on the first ring. Ms. Okafor. A woman's voice, professional and crisp. We've been expecting your call. Mr. Shin would like to meet with you tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'm sending a car. Wait, I didn't even say... The car will arrive at your address at 1:30. Please dress professionally. Business formal. She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, heart racing. How did she know my name? How did she know my address? How did she know I would call? I should have blocked the number right then, should have thrown the business card away, should have stayed in my safe, miserable, predictable life. Instead, I went to the one decent suit I owned, bought for job interviews years ago, and prayed it still fit. The car that arrived the next day wasn't just a car. It was a Mercedes S-Class with a driver in a black suit who opened the door for me like I was royalty instead of a broke waitress from Queens. We drove into Manhattan, past the neighborhoods I knew, into areas where I'd only window shopped in my dreams. The car finally stopped in front of a sleek high-rise in Tribeca. The driver opened my door. Penthouse, they're expecting you. The lobby was all marble and modern art. The elevator required a key card which the doorman provided with a polite nod. As the numbers climbed, 30, 35, 40, my anxiety climbed with them. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse apartment. Not an apartment. A palace. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Minimalist furniture that probably cost more than my student loans. Art on the walls that looked like it belonged in museums. Everything was clean lines and expensive taste and the kind of wealth that didn't need to show off because it just was. Ms. Okafor? I turned. A woman in her 40s, Korean, impeccably dressed in a navy pantsuit. I'm Mrs. Lee, thank you for coming. Mr. Shin will see you shortly. Please have a seat. She gestured to a white leather sofa that I was terrified to sit on with my off-rack suit. I sat anyway. Mrs. Lee poured tea from a service that probably cost more than my monthly rent. How do you take it? Just plain is fine. She handed me a delicate cup. I held it like it might shatter if I breathed wrong. You're probably wondering why you're here, Mrs. Lee said, sitting across from me with her own cup. The thought crossed my mind, a small smile. You're direct. Good. Mr. Shin appreciates directness. She set down her cup. Ms. Okafor, what I'm about to discuss with you requires absolute confidentiality. Before we continue, I need you to sign this. She slid a document across the coffee table. NDA, in bold letters at the top. If I don't sign, then you finish your tea, we call the car, and you go home. No harm, no foul. You keep the tip Mr. Shin left you, and we never contact you again. I picked up the NDA. Read through it quickly. Standard confidentiality clause. Nothing about signing away my organs or firstborn child. I signed. Mrs. Lee took the document, filed it in a folder, and looked at me with something that might have been respect. Ms. Okafor, are you familiar with the concept of a contract marriage? My stomach dropped. Like on reality TV? Not quite. She leaned back. Mr. Shin has a unique problem. He's the heir to a very powerful family business. Korean, traditional. His grandmother, the matriarch of the family, has been pressuring him to marry for years. She's 78 years old, in declining health, and her dying wish is to see him settled with a wife. Okay, I said slowly. And this concerns me how? Mr. Shin has no interest in a traditional Korean marriage. The expectations, the obligations, the loss of privacy. However, he also loves his grandmother deeply and wants to honor her wishes. So he needs a solution. A temporary one. Oh my God, you want me to pretend to be his wife? For 12 months, Mrs. Lee confirmed. You would live here, in this penthouse. Attend family functions and business events as needed. Play the role of devoted spouse. In return, you would receive $500,000, paid in full at the end of the contract period, assuming all terms are met. $500,000. I couldn't breathe. That was more money than I'd seen in my entire life. That was enough to pay off my student loans, clear my credit cards, send money home to Lagos, and still have enough left over to actually start my life. Why me? I whispered. Mrs. Lee smiled. Mr. Shin was very specific in his requirements. He wanted someone outside his usual circles, someone who wouldn't have connections to his business or family that could complicate things. Someone intelligent, composed, capable of handling high-pressure situations, and someone who, frankly, needed the money badly enough to take this seriously. You investigated me. Thoroughly. We know about your debts, your jobs, your family in Lagos. We know you're a hard worker with no criminal record, no scandal, nothing that would make you a liability. You're perfect for what we need. And what if I say no? Then you say no. The car takes you home. But Ms. Okafor, Mrs. Lee leaned forward. When will you ever have another opportunity like this? 12 months, 1 year of your life, and in return, every financial problem you have, solved. Gone. You could start over. The door to the penthouse opened. He walked in. The man from the restaurant. Today in a charcoal suit, white shirt open at the collar. Still devastatingly handsome, still carrying that aura of danger. Ms. Okafor, he said, his voice like dark velvet. I'm Kim Shin. Thank you for coming. I stood, probably too quickly. Mr. Shin. He moved to stand beside Mrs. Lee, hands in his pockets, studying me with those intense dark eyes. Mrs. Lee has explained the arrangement. She has. And I think you're insane, I said. The words came out before I could stop them. I'm sorry, that was honest. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Made him look younger, more human. Good. I don't want someone who'll just agree to everything. This arrangement only works if we're both honest with each other. You want to pay me $500,000 to pretend to be your wife for a year? Yes. Why not just find someone real? I gestured vaguely at him. You. Another smile. Complicated family, complicated business. A real relationship would be messy. This is clean, transactional, and when it's over, we both walk away. What are the terms? Besides playing housewife at family dinners? Mrs. Lee handed me a thick contract. It's all in here. But the basics, you'd live here full time. Attend events as required, probably 2 to 3 per month. Be available for family visits. Maintain the appearance of a loving marriage in public. What about in private? Separate bedrooms, Kim Shin said firmly. Separate lives as much as possible. I travel frequently for business. When I'm here, we'll be cordial but not intimate. This is a professional arrangement, Ms. Okafor. Nothing more. And after 12 months, quiet divorce. We cite irreconcilable differences. You get your money and disappear. I satisfy my grandmother's wishes and get back to my life. I looked at the contract in my hands, looked at Kim Shin with his perfect suit and dangerous eyes, looked at Mrs. Lee with her professional smile. This was insane. This was illegal, probably. This was the worst idea I'd ever heard. I need to think about it, I said. You have 48 hours, Kim Shin replied. After that, the offer expires, and we find someone else. He pulled another card from his pocket, his actual card this time, with his personal number on it. If you agree, call that number. We'll arrange the details. If not, he shrugged. I hope your other jobs work out. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next night. I read the contract cover to cover at least 5 times. It was legitimate, drawn up by expensive lawyers, every detail outlined. Living arrangements, public appearances, financial compensation structure, termination clauses. There was even a section about what happened if either party developed real feelings. Answer: immediate contract termination with a reduced payout. I called my best friend Amara, who'd moved to Boston for grad school. You're joking, she said when I finished explaining. I'm not. Ngozi, this is how people end up on true crime documentaries. Or how people get out of debt and actually start living their lives. Silence. Then, you're seriously considering this? $500,000, Amara. Do you know what I could do with that money? What I could do for my family? You could also end up married to a mobster who makes you disappear when you're no longer useful. He's not a mobster. You don't know what he is. That's the problem. She wasn't wrong. But she also wasn't drowning in debt while working 3 jobs and still barely surviving. 47 hours after leaving that penthouse, sitting in my tiny apartment with another past due notice in my hand, I picked up my phone. Kim Shin answered on the first ring. Ms. Okafor. I have conditions, I said. I'm listening. First, I want $100,000 up front. Not the full amount, but enough to prove this is real and to handle some immediate debts. The rest at the end as contracted. Done. Second, I want it in writing that I can leave at any time if I feel unsafe, with a prorated payout based on time served. Acceptable. Third, my family can never know this is fake. As far as anyone in Lagos is concerned, I met you, fell in love, got married. If this gets out and humiliates them, it won't. That's in both our interests. Anything else? I took a breath. Why me, really? You could have any woman in New York. Why some broke waitress from Nigeria? He was quiet for a moment. Because when I look at you, I see someone who understands survival. Someone who knows how to fight for what matters. Someone who won't fall apart when things get complicated. And Ms. Okafor, things will get complicated. That's not reassuring. It's honest. So do we have a deal? I thought about my studio apartment, my 3 jobs, my crushing debt, my family in Lagos who needed help, my life that was going nowhere except further into the hole. I thought about Kim Shin with his dangerous eyes and his impossible offer, and I thought about how everyone has a price. That moment when desperation meets opportunity. We have a deal, I said. Good. Mrs. Lee will contact you tomorrow with the arrangements. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Shin. He hung up. I sat in my apartment, phone in hand, and realized I'd just agreed to fake marry a Korean Mafia boss for $500,000. This was either the smartest decision I'd ever made or the one that would destroy my life completely. Spoiler alert, it was both. The transformation happened fast. 3 days after I agreed, a team arrived at my apartment. Not kidding, an actual team. Personal shopper, hairstylist, makeup artist, and someone who introduced herself as an etiquette consultant. "We have 2 weeks to prepare you," Mrs. Lee explained as I watched strangers catalogue my entire wardrobe with expressions that ranged from polite concern to barely concealed horror. "The family announcement is at the end of the month. You need to look, act, and speak like someone Kim Shin would actually marry." "Meaning I currently don't?" "Meaning you need polish. No offence, Ms. Okafor, but you dress like a struggling artist because you are one. Mrs. Kim Shin dresses like she belongs at galas and charity events. We have work to do." The next 2 weeks were a blur. Shopping trips to boutiques where the salespeople knew Mrs. Lee by name and brought out clothes I'd never even imagined wearing, dresses that cost thousands of dollars, shoes that were essentially wearable art, jewellery that required insurance policies. "This is insane," I muttered, staring at myself in a dressing room mirror, wearing a Valentino dress that cost more than a semester of college. "This is your life now," the personal shopper, Claudia, said cheerfully. "Might as well enjoy it." But it wasn't just clothes. The etiquette consultant, a terrifyingly polished woman named Ms. Park, drilled me on everything from proper table settings to how to hold a conversation at high society events. "You're from Lagos," she said during one of our sessions. "That's your strength. You're exotic, interesting, different from the typical Korean matches Kim Shin would be expected to make. We lean into that. You're confident, educated, well-travelled. You met at a gallery opening. He was impressed by your perspective on the art. You were impressed by his knowledge of African contemporary artists." Does Kim Shin actually know anything about African contemporary art? He does now. We briefed him. They'd thought of everything. Even my backstory was crafted. "We met 6 months ago. Whirlwind romance. Kept it private because of his family obligations and my desire for privacy. Now we're ready to announce our engagement." "Engagement?" I said to Mrs. Lee. "I thought we were already married." "To his family, you're the fiancé he's about to marry. They don't need to know the actual marriage is already filed. Less questions that way." The actual legal marriage had happened my second day in the penthouse. Quick civil ceremony, 2 witnesses, signed papers. I was legally Mrs. Kim Shin before I'd even properly moved in. The irony wasn't lost on me. My first night in the penthouse was surreal. Mrs. Lee gave me a tour like I was checking into a hotel. Master bedroom, Kim Shin's. Off limits unless there were guests who expected us to share. My bedroom enormous with an attached bathroom that had a soaking tub and a shower with more jets than a car wash. "Your room," she'd said simply. "It's bigger than my entire apartment. You'll get used to it." The penthouse had everything. Full kitchen that I'd never have to use because a private chef came 3 times a week. Living room with that incredible view. Home office. Gym. Even a small library. "Kim Shin reads?" I'd asked, running my fingers along the spines of books in Korean, English and Japanese. "Voraciously. He's more educated than he lets on. MIT for undergrad. Wharton for his MBA. Speaks 4 languages." "What does he actually do? Besides the whole Mafia boss thing?" Mrs. Lee had given me a look. "He runs legitimate businesses. Import-export, real estate, technology investments. The family has interests that are complicated. But Kim Shin himself stays clean." That's not an answer. It's the only answer you need. Don't ask questions about the business, Ms. Okafor. That's in the contract you signed. She was right. Page 17, Clause 4b. The second party agrees not to inquire about or involve themselves in the first party's business operations. So I didn't ask. I saw very little of Kim Shin those first 2 weeks. He was gone most days. Business, Mrs. Lee said vaguely. When he was home, he stayed in his office or his room. We'd pass each other in the kitchen occasionally, exchange polite good mornings, and that was it. It was like living with a very attractive, very dangerous ghost. Until the night he knocked on my bedroom door at 11 p.m. "It's open," I called, expecting Mrs. Lee with some last-minute wedding planning detail. Kim Shin entered instead, still in his work clothes but with his tie loosened and his hair slightly mussed. He looked tired, and more human than I'd seen him. "We need to talk," he said. I closed my laptop. I'd been working on a freelance design project because I hadn't quit those jobs yet. Couldn't quite believe this was real. Okay. He sat in the chair by my window, and I noticed he was careful to keep distance between us. Always professional. Always proper. The family dinner is tomorrow night, he said. My grandmother, my parents, my uncle and aunt, my 2 younger sisters. They're intense. Mrs. Lee prepared me. Mrs. Lee can't prepare you for my grandmother. He ran a hand through his hair. She's going to test you, push you, try to figure out if you're worthy of the family name, and you need to push back. I thought I was supposed to be the perfect demure fiancé. My grandmother doesn't respect demure. She respects strength, intelligence. She needs to believe you're someone who can handle this family. Handle me. Can I? He looked at me then, really looked at me. I don't know yet, but you're here, so you must have some fight in you. Why are you telling me this? Wouldn't it be easier if I failed? Then you could tell your grandmother it didn't work out and find someone else. Because I don't want you to fail. He stood. Contrary to what you might think, Ms. Okafor, I'm not a monster. You signed a contract. You're entitled to fulfill it and get what you were promised. But you need to understand what you're walking into. A family dinner. A performance. The first of many. And if you can't convince them tomorrow night that this is real, that we're real, then none of this works. He moved to the door, then paused. They're going to ask how we met. Stick to the story. Gallery opening 6 months ago. I asked about your interpretation of a piece by Yinka Schonibert. You told me I was wrong. I was intrigued. We went for coffee. The rest is history. Were you really wrong about Yinka Schonibert? A small smile. Probably. I usually am when it comes to art, but I know enough to fake it. He opened the door. Get some sleep, Ms. Okafor. Tomorrow night changes everything. He left, and I sat in my enormous bedroom in my penthouse prison, trying to calm my racing heart. Tomorrow night. My first performance as Mrs. Kim Shin. No pressure. The family dinner was at his grandmother's estate in Westchester. Not a house. An estate. Gated entrance. Long driveway through manicured grounds. A mansion that looked like it had been transported from Seoul and reassembled stone by stone. Kim Shin drove us himself. No driver, no security. Just him in a black Audi. One hand on the wheel, the other tapping against his thigh. He was nervous. That terrified me more than anything. Last chance to back out, he said as we pulled up to the house. You'd still pay me? No? Then we're doing this. He smiled. Actually smiled. You're tougher than you look. I've survived New York City on a waitress salary for 3 years. Your family can't be worse than that. You'd be surprised. A woman opened the door before we even rang. 50s, elegant with Kim Shin's eyes. His mother. Shin-ah, she said warmly, pulling him into a hug before turning to me. Her expression shifted. Not hostile, but evaluating. And you must be Ngozi. Mrs. Kim. I bowed slightly the way Ms. Park had taught me. Thank you so much for welcoming me. She looked me up and down. I was wearing one of my new dresses. Oscar de la Renta, navy blue. Elegant, but not flashy. My hair was styled in natural curls because Claudia had insisted I lean into my Nigerian heritage, not hide it. Minimal jewelry. Professional, but warm. Come in, Kim Shin's mother finally said. Everyone's waiting. The house was as beautiful inside as out. Traditional Korean aesthetic mixed with modern luxury. We were led to a dining room where the family had already gathered. Kim Shin's father, tall, stern, a harder version of his son. His uncle and aunt, both watching me with suspicion. 2 younger women who had to be his sisters, mid-20s, stylish, and currently whispering to each other while staring at me. And at the head of the table, a tiny elderly woman in a traditional hanbok who radiated more power than everyone else in the room combined. The grandmother. Halmoni, Kim Shin said respectfully, bowing deeply. He spoke in Korean and she responded in the same language. Then her eyes shifted to me. When she spoke, it was in perfect English. So, you're the girl who thinks she can marry my grandson? not thinks she can marry. Present tense, like I was still trying to prove myself. I'm the woman who loves your grandson, I corrected gently, and who he loves in return. Silence. Everyone stared. Kim Shin's hand found mine under the table, warm, solid, anchoring. Then his grandmother laughed, actually laughed. She has spine.
I have
Good.
spine.
Sit, sit. Let's eat, and you can tell me how you convinced my grandson to finally settle down. The dinner was brutal. Not because they were cruel, they weren't, but because every single thing I said was analysed, questioned, tested. His grandmother asked about my family in Lagos, my education, my work, why I left Nigeria, what I wanted from life. His mother wanted to know about my parents' marriage, how many siblings I had, whether I wanted children. His sisters asked if I knew how to cook Korean food, if I'd ever been to Korea. What I thought about traditional gender roles. Every answer was a trap. But I'd been poor my entire adult life. I'd negotiated with debt collectors and landlords and customers who wanted free work. I knew how to navigate hostile territory. I don't know how to cook Korean food, I told his sisters honestly. But I'd love to learn. My mother taught me that food is love. Maybe you could teach me your family recipes. To his mother, my parents have been married for 32 years. Not always happily, if I'm honest. But they chose each other every day. That's what I want. Not perfection, but commitment. To his grandmother, I want to build something that matters. My design work, yes, but also a family, a legacy, something my children can be proud of. Children I wasn't planning to have, but she didn't need to know that. You're very articulate, his uncle said. It didn't sound like a compliment. Very prepared with your answers. I teach university students, I replied smoothly, part of our cover story. I'm used to defending my positions. Kim Shin squeezed my hand. I couldn't tell if it was support or warning. The meal continued. Multiple courses, each more elaborate than the last. I used the correct utensils, kept my posture perfect, laughed at the right moments. Everything Ms. Park had drilled into me. Finally, after what felt like hours, Kim Shin's grandmother set down her chopsticks. "Walk with me," she said to me. Not a request. Kim Shin started to stand. Halmony, just her. Those sharp eyes pinned him in place. You stay. I followed her out of the dining room, through the house, out to a garden that was stunning even in the fading light. Stone paths, careful landscaping, a small pond with koi fish. We walked in silence for a full minute before she spoke. You're not in love with him. My stomach dropped. Don't lie to me, child. I've seen 50 years of people lying to get what they want. You're good at this, I'll give you that. But I know my grandson, and I know what love looks like. This isn't it. I stopped walking. She stopped too, turning to face me. Are you going to tell him you know? I asked quietly. Should I? That depends on what you want. Your grandson happy? Or your grandson meeting some traditional expectation of happiness that he's never going to fulfill? She studied me. Bold. Foolish, but bold. He's a good man, I continued, from what I can see. He's trying to honour you while also being true to himself. This arrangement, whatever you think it is, gives him space to do both. Is that really so terrible? You realise he's paying you. So she knew everything. Of course she did. Yes. And when the year is up, when the money's been paid and the marriage dissolved, what then? Then he moves on with his life. And so do I. Nobody gets hurt. Everyone gets hurt, she said softly. That's what you young people never understand. Every lie costs something. Every pretend game has real consequences. You might not love him now, but a year is a long time to play house with someone, especially someone like my Shinar. I'll be careful. See that you are. She started walking again, and I fell into step beside her. His mother doesn't trust you. His uncle thinks you're a gold digger. His sisters think you're not good enough. And you? I think you're exactly what he needs. Someone who isn't afraid of him. Someone who sees him as a man, Not as family heir or business asset, even if it's fake. She stopped by the pond, watching the koi swim. I'm dying, you know. I'm sorry. Don't be. I've lived a full life, made my mistakes, built my empire, raised my family, but I want to die knowing Shina has someone, even if that someone is a girl from Lagos who's being paid to pretend. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand the stakes. This isn't just about money for you or space for him. This is about giving an old woman peace before she dies. Can you do that? Can you pretend well enough to let me die happy? The weight of that question nearly crushed me. Yes, I whispered. I can do that. She nodded. Good. Then, let's go back inside. They'll be wondering if I've scared you off. Have you? No. You're tougher than you look, just like he said. We walked back to the house. The family was in the living room now, drinks in hand, conversation flowing. Kim Shin stood when we entered, his eyes searching mine for any sign of disaster. I smiled. Your grandmother has been telling me stories about when you were young. I had no idea you were such a troublemaker. Relief flooded his face. Halmony, you didn't. Oh, I did. His grandmother settled into her chair like a queen on her throne. Someone needs to keep you humble, Shina. Now, Ngozi, let me tell you about the time he was 7 and decided to borrow his father's car. The rest of the evening was lighter. The grandmother's apparent approval shifted the dynamic. His mother warmed up slightly. His sisters started asking genuine questions about Lagos instead of testing me. Even his uncle's suspicions seemed to ease. By the time we left, I was exhausted but triumphant. Kim Shin didn't speak until we were back on the highway, the estate disappearing in the rearview mirror. What did she say to you? In the garden? I thought about lying, thought about keeping the secret of his grandmother's knowledge to myself, but he'd asked for honesty. She knows, I said quietly. The car swerved slightly. What? She knows this is an arrangement. She's known from the beginning. He pulled over to the shoulder, put the car in park, and turned to face me. She knows, and she didn't. She doesn't care. She wants you to be happy, or at least she wants to die believing you'll be happy, even if that happiness is rented. He laughed, actually laughed, dropping his head against the steering wheel. Of course she knows. She always knows everything. I should have realized. She's not going to tell anyone. She said I'm good for you, someone who isn't afraid of you. Are you? Afraid of me? I looked at him in the dim light of the car. Sometimes, but not in the way you mean. What way, then? I'm afraid of forgetting this is fake, of getting too comfortable in the role, of believing the lie we're selling. He was quiet for a long moment. That's in the contract. If either party develops genuine feelings, immediate termination, reduced payout. I remember. I looked out at the highway. Don't worry, Mr. Shin. I'm very good at protecting my heart. Had to be, growing up the way I did. Right. He pulled back onto the highway. Good. But something had shifted between us in that car. Some wall had cracked just slightly. I could feel it even if I couldn't name it. When we got back to the penthouse, he paused at my bedroom door. You did well tonight. Really well. Thank you. I'm being paid $500,000. I should do well. The wedding was 2 weeks later. Small ceremony, just family and a few close business associates. The grandmother's estate again, this time with the garden transformed into something from a fairy tale. White flowers everywhere, string quartet, champagne that probably cost more per bottle than my monthly rent used to be. I wore Vera Wang. Actual Vera Wang. A dress that made me feel like a princess playing dress-up in someone else's life, which I guess was exactly what I was doing. Kim Shin wore a tuxedo that should have been illegal. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. And when I walked down that improvised aisle, his father walking me since mine couldn't fly from Lagos on such short notice, the way Kim Shin looked at me almost made me forget this was all pretend. Almost. You're beautiful, he whispered when I reached him. You're paying me to be. Still true. The ceremony was traditional Korean followed by Western vows. We'd written our own, more accurately. Mrs. Lee had written them and we'd memorized the lies. "I promise to stand beside you," Kim Shin said, his hands holding mine, his eyes locked on my face. "To support your dreams and share your burdens. To choose you every day for as long as we both shall live." My turn. "I promise to be your partner in all things. To challenge you, support you, and love you even when it's difficult. To build a life with you that honors both our histories and creates new traditions." The lies came out so smooth, so practiced, so believable. The officiant pronounced us husband and wife. "You may kiss the bride." Kim Shin's hands came up to cup my face. Gentle, careful, his thumb brushed my cheek. "Ready," he whispered, too low for anyone else to hear. "Are you?" He smiled, and then he kissed me. It was supposed to be for show, a quick press of lips to seal the deal for the audience. Instead, it was soft and slow and thorough, his mouth moving against mine with a skill that made my knees weak, one hand sliding into my hair, the other at the small of my back, pulling me closer. I forgot to breathe. I forgot we were pretending. I forgot everything except the taste of champagne on his lips and the way my heart was trying to break out of my chest. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark and slightly dazed. "Good performance," I whispered. "Yeah, performance." But his hand stayed at my back for several seconds longer than necessary. The reception was everything a society wedding should be. Toasts and champagne and a cake that was more sculpture than food. Kim Shin's grandmother gave a speech in Korean that had everyone laughing and crying at once. His mother actually smiled at me. His sisters asked to take photos. I danced with Kim Shin for our first dance, some romantic ballad his mother had chosen. He held me close, one hand at my waist, the other clasping mine. "You're good at this," I said as he spun me. "What? Dancing?" "All of it. The touching. The looking at me like I'm the only person in the room. The performance. Maybe it's not a performance. Kim Shin, relax, Ngozi. I'm not falling in love with you, but we're supposed to be newlyweds. Might as well lean into it." "Right. Of course." But his hand tightened on my waist, and when I looked up, he was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. The party went until midnight. Then we were bundled into the car, now decorated with "Just Married" written in the windows, and driven back to Manhattan. Back to the penthouse, back to our separate bedrooms and our separate lives and the reality that this was all an act. Except when we got home, Kim Shin didn't immediately disappear to his room like usual. "Drink?" he offered, heading to the bar. "Sure." He poured us both whiskey, the good stuff, the kind I'd only ever served to other people. We sat in the living room with its impossible view of the city lights. "To 12 months, he said, raising his glass. 11.5 now, the wedding counts." "To 11.5 months of wedded bliss, then," we drank. The whiskey burned in the best way. "Your grandmother cried during the ceremony," I said. "I saw." She really believes this is real. She wants to believe it's real. There's a difference. He swirled his glass. "Thank you for giving her that. The fantasy. She's dying. 3 months, maybe 6. Cancer. She won't do treatment. Says she's lived long enough. I'm sorry. Don't be. She got what she wanted. Me married, settled, happy. Or the appearance of it, anyway. That's all that matters." But his voice cracked on the last word just slightly. Without thinking, I reached over and took his hand. He stared at our joined hands like he'd never seen such a thing before. "Kim Shin." "I should go to bed." He stood abruptly, pulling away. "Big day tomorrow. My uncle wants to introduce you to the business partners at some charity gala. Mrs. Lee will brief you." "Okay. Good night, Ngozi." "Good night." He disappeared down the hall to his room, leaving me alone with the city lights and the lingering taste of whiskey and wedding cake. I touched my lips, still could feel the ghost of that kiss. This was dangerous. This was exactly what the contract warned against. But God help me, I was starting to understand why people fell for their fake spouses in all those romance novels. The next few months fell into a strange rhythm. Days when Kim Shin was gone for work and I had the penthouse to myself. I'd work on freelance projects, video call my family in Lagos, try to maintain some connection to the person I was before all this. Evenings when we'd attend events together, gallery openings, charity galas, business dinners. I'd wear my expensive dresses and play the devoted wife while Kim Shin worked the room with the ease of someone born to this life. Nights when we'd come home and share a drink, talking about nothing important. How his meeting went, what I was designing, whether we thought the chicken at dinner was too dry, domestic, comfortable, dangerous. "You're getting too close," Amara warned during one of our video calls. She could see it even from Boston. "I can hear it in your voice when you talk about him. I'm just doing my job. Your job doesn't require you to look at him like that." Like what? Like he's not paying you to be there. She was right, of course. But it was hard not to get attached when Kim Shin brought me coffee every morning without being asked. Remembered that I took it with too much cream. When he'd text me from business trips to ask if I'd eaten. When he'd leave books on my nightstand. Contemporary African authors, always with a note. "Thought you might like this." When he'd come home late and tired and still stop by my room to say goodnight. "How was Tokyo?" I'd ask. "Exhausting." "How was your meeting with the designer?" "Good. They want to commission a full branding package." "That's great, Ngozi. Really." And he'd smile, genuine and warm before heading to his own room. These weren't the actions of a man playing a part. Or maybe they were, and I was the fool falling for a very good performance. 4 months in, we attended a gala for his uncle's company. Black tie, Manhattan elite, the kind of event where fortunes changed hands over cocktails. I wore red. A bold choice, but Claudia had insisted. "You're not trying to blend in anymore. You're Mrs. Kim Shin. You own the room." Kim Shin's reaction when I emerged from my room, stunned silence. "Too much?" I asked. "No. Perfect. You're perfect." The gala was the usual, schmoozing and small talk and navigating the complicated politics of wealthy people. I'd gotten good at it, knew whose hands to shake, whose conversations to join, whose questions to deflect. But then, a woman approached, late 30s, stunning in a way that was almost aggressive, and she looked at Kim Shin like she owned him. "Shina," she purred in Korean, then switched to English. "I heard you'd gotten married. I had to see for myself." Kim Shin's entire body went rigid. "Ha-won. Aren't you going to introduce me to your wife?" The way she said wife made it clear she thought this was hilarious. "Nagozi, this is Park Hai-won, an old acquaintance. Hai-won, my wife, Nagozi." Charmed. She looked me up and down. "You're very different from his usual type." "I'll take that as a compliment." "You shouldn't." She turned back to Kim Shin, speaking Korean now, fast, intimate, with hand gestures that made it clear they had history. Kim Shin responded in kind, his voice tight. The conversation went on for maybe 2 minutes, though it felt like hours. Finally, Hai-won laughed, sharp and cruel, and walked away. "What was that about?" I asked. "Nothing. Old girlfriend. She's upset I didn't tell her I was getting married." "Old girlfriend or ex-wife?" "Girlfriend. 3 years ago. It ended badly." "Badly how?" "Badly in a way that's none of your business." He caught my arm, gentler than his tone. "I'm sorry that came out wrong. Just, hey, Won is part of a life I don't want anymore. Can we drop it?" "Sure." But the evening was ruined. Kim Shin was tense the rest of the night, and when we got home, he went straight to his room without our usual nightcap. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about the way Hae-won had looked at him, the familiarity, the intimacy, trying not to care that he had a past I knew nothing about. Trying not to admit I was jealous of a relationship that had ended years before I'd even met him. 2 days later, I was working in the home office when Kim Shin appeared in the doorway. "Can we talk?" "Of course." He came in, closed the door behind him, sat in the chair across from my desk. I owe you an explanation about Haiwon. You don't owe me anything. This is a business arrangement, remember? Still, you're my wife, even if it's fake. You deserve to know what you're walking into. He ran a hand through his hair, that tell that meant he was uncomfortable. Haiwon and I dated for 2 years. She's from a good family, Korean. Everything my parents wanted. We were serious. I thought about proposing. My stomach twisted. What happened? I found out she was sleeping with my uncle, the family business uncle. Turns out she was more interested in family connections than in me. When I confronted her, she didn't even deny it. Said I was naive to think relationships were about love instead of strategy. Kim Shin, I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because she's going to try to cause problems. She's vindictive. And she has connections in the family. My uncle still takes her to events sometimes, just to twist the knife. Does your family know what happened? My grandmother does. No one else. Family reputation, you know. Can't have that kind of scandal. I came around the desk, sat on the edge so I was closer to him. I'm sorry, that's horrible. It's history, but it's why I wanted this. He gestured between us, to be clean, transactional. No emotions, no mess, no betrayal. Just a contract we both honor. And is it? Clean? He looked up at me then, and something in his eyes made my breath catch. I don't know anymore, he admitted quietly. Is it for you? No. The word hung between us, honest, damning. Ngozi, we should keep our distance, I said, standing up quickly. Like the contract says, separate lives, just the public appearances. That's what we agreed to. You're right. Good. Good. But neither of us moved, and when he reached out, fingertips brushing my wrist, I didn't pull away. This is a bad idea, I whispered. Terrible idea. We should stop. Absolutely should. His hand slid up my arm. I stepped closer. Ngozi, don't. Don't say whatever you're going to say. If we're going to be stupid, let's just be stupid without making promises we can't keep. He pulled me down into his lap. I went willingly. One time, he said against my neck.
One time.
Get it out of our systems, then back to the contract. One time, I agreed. We both knew we were lying. It wasn't one time. Of course it wasn't one time. That night in the office led to 3 more nights that week. Led to Kim Shin knocking on my bedroom door instead of going to his own. Led to mornings waking up tangled in expensive sheets with him pressed against my back. Led to me falling completely catastrophically in love with my fake husband. This is against the contract, I said one morning, lying in his bed while he traced patterns on my shoulder. Clause 7D, either party developing genuine feelings results in immediate termination. You memorized it? I wrote it. Well, my lawyers wrote it. But I approved it. So what are we doing? He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. What do you want to be doing? I want to finish the contract, get my money, pay off my debts, send money to my family, start my life over. That's what you want or what you think you should want. Damn him for seeing through me so easily. Both. What if I said I wanted to renegotiate the contract? My heart stopped. What do you mean? What if instead of 12 months and $500,000, we tried something real? No timeline, no payout, just us. I sat up, pulling the sheet around me. You're not thinking clearly. This is just sex. Good sex, but still just sex. You're confusing physical intimacy with emotional connection. Don't do that. Don't minimize what this is. What is it then, Kim Shin? Tell me. He sat up too, reaching for me. I don't know. But I know I think about you constantly. I know I rush home from business trips because I want to see you. I know I've started making decisions based on whether they'll make you smile. I know that what I feel for you is nothing like what I felt for Haiwon or anyone else. You barely know me, the real me. Then let me. Let's make this real, Ngozi. No contract, no pretending, just us figuring this out together. It was everything I wanted. which was exactly why I couldn't say yes. No. No? I climbed out of bed, started gathering my clothes. I came here for money, for a solution to my problems, not for a relationship with someone whose life is so different from mine that we might as well be from different planets. That's bullshit and you know it. Is it? Kim Shin, you live in a world I don't understand. Your family, your business, your connections. I'm playing dress-up in a life that isn't mine. The money was supposed to let me build my own life, not trade one dependent situation for another. You think being with me would make you dependent. I think loving you would destroy me. The truth came out raw, because in 11 months, when the contract ends, you'll move on to whatever powerful, connected, appropriate woman your family picks next. And I'll be back in Queens with a broken heart and a bank account that won't make up for it. That's not. It is. We both know it is. I pulled on my shirt. This was a mistake. We need to go back to the contract terms. Separate lives, public appearances only. Ngozi, wait. Don't. Please don't make this harder. I left his room, went back to mine, locked the door, and cried harder than I had since the day I'd signed the contract in the first place. The next week was hell. We were polite, professional, like strangers sharing an apartment. Kim Shin worked late every night. I threw myself into freelance projects, working until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped. We attended one charity event, an art auction, and played our roles perfectly. The loving couple, the devoted spouses. No one watching would have guessed we'd barely spoken in days. You look terrible, Amara said during our video call. Thanks, that's exactly what I need to hear. What happened? Did he do something? Because I will fly to New York and he didn't do anything, that's the problem. I told her everything. The sex, the feelings, his offer to renegotiate, my refusal. She was quiet when I finished. Then, why did you say no? Because it's not real, Amara. It started as a transaction. You can't build a real relationship on that foundation. Why not? What? Why not? People marry for all kinds of reasons. Money, status, family obligation. Sometimes those marriages become real. Sometimes they don't. But the starting point doesn't determine the ending. This is different. How? Because I'm scared, the admission burst out. I'm terrified, Amara. If I let myself believe this is real, if I trust him and fall completely, and then it falls apart, I won't survive it. The money won't help. Nothing will help. I'll be destroyed. So you're protecting yourself by destroying it first? I'm honoring our agreement. You're being a coward. Maybe. But I'm a coward who'll walk away with her heart intact and $500,000. That was always the plan. Except your heart's not intact. It's already his, whether you admit it or not. I hung up. She was wrong. She had to be wrong. Month 6. Halfway through the contract, Kim Shin came to me with an envelope. What's this? Open it. Inside was a check for $250,000, half the agreed amount. I don't understand. You wanted financial security, independence, here it is. Early. No strings attached. Kim Shin. The rest when the contract ends, as agreed. But I don't want money to be a reason you're here anymore. If you stay, I want it to be because you want to, not because you're financially obligated. I stared at the check, at the number that would change my life. I can't accept this. You can. The contract allows for early partial payment at my discretion. This is my discretion. Why? Because I want you to have a choice. Real choice. Not fake marriage choice or money choice. Just whether you want to be here. With me. For whatever reason. He left the envelope on the kitchen counter and walked away. I stood there for an hour just staring at that check. Then I picked up my phone and called my bank. The money cleared the next day. I paid off my student loans in full, cleared my credit cards, sent $20,000 to my mother in Lagos with instructions to use it for the family, for emergencies, for whatever they needed. And suddenly, I wasn't drowning anymore. I was free. The question was, what did I want to do with that freedom? Month 7. Kim Shin's grandmother died on a Tuesday morning in October. He got the call at 6 a.m. I heard him on the phone, his voice breaking, and I was out of bed and in his room before I could think about boundaries or contracts. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, tears streaming down his face. Kim Shin. She's gone. I sat beside him, pulled him into my arms. He collapsed against me, this powerful, dangerous man reduced to a grieving grandson. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "She was so happy at the wedding. She kept talking about it, about you, about how you were good for me, how you'd keep me honest." He laughed, broken. She knew it was fake, and she still. It wasn't fake to her. That's what matters. I lied to her. You gave her peace. There's a difference. He cried for a long time. I held him through all of it, stroking his hair, murmuring comfort in Igbo and English, not caring that we weren't supposed to be this close anymore. The funeral was 3 days later. Traditional Korean ceremony, hundreds of people, tears and tradition and overwhelming grief. I stood beside Kim Shin through all of it, held his hand during the service, greeted mourners as his wife, supported him when he gave the eulogy and his voice broke halfway through. That night, back at the penthouse, he knocked on my door. "Can I sleep here tonight? I don't want to be alone." "Of course." He climbed into my bed, fully clothed, and I held him like I would a child. No sex, no promises, just comfort. "Thank you," he whispered in the dark. "For what?" "For being here, for being real when I needed real." "I'm always real with you, Kim Shin, even when I'm trying not to be." His arms tightened around me. "I love you." My heart stopped. "You don't mean that. You're grieving." "I love you, Ngozi. I've loved you for months. Maybe since that first family dinner when you stood up to my grandmother. Maybe since the wedding when kissing you felt like coming home. Maybe since every morning when you shuffle into the kitchen with your bonnet still on and grumble about how too early 6 a.m. is. Kim Shin, I know you're scared. I know this started wrong. I know you think I'll leave you. But I'm telling you now, clearly, while I'm sober and sad and completely honest. I love you. And if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of these 6 months proving it. And then the rest of our lives after that. I couldn't breathe. What if I break your heart? Then you break it, but at least it'll have been real. What if you break mine? I won't. I swear on my grandmother's memory, Ngozi. I won't. This is insane. Probably. We barely know each other outside of this arranged situation. So we'll get to know each other. For real this time. Your family will never fully accept me. My grandmother accepted you. That's enough. I'm from Lagos. You're from Seoul. Our worlds are completely different. Then we'll build a new world. Ours. I was crying now too, I realized. Tears streaming down my face in the dark. This isn't how it was supposed to go. I know. I was supposed to get my money and leave. I know. I wasn't supposed to fall in love with you. But did you? His voice was so gentle, so hopeful. Did you fall in love with me, Ngozi? Yes. The word broke free. Yes, you arrogant, dangerous, impossible man. I fell in love with you. Completely. Catastrophically. Against every bit of common sense I have. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. "So we're really doing this?" I whispered against his lips. "If you want to." "What about the contract?" "Burn it. I don't care about the contract. I care about you." "I'm keeping the money." He laughed. "I'd expect nothing less." "And you're teaching me Korean. I'm tired of not knowing what your family is saying about me." "Deal." "And I'm redesigning your entire office. The aesthetic is all wrong." "Whatever you want." "And we're getting a dog." "Absolutely not." Kim Shin. "Fine. We'll get a dog. Small dog. Big dog. Medium dog. Final offer." I kissed him again. Deal. The contract ended on schedule. Month 12 right on time. Mrs. Lee brought the final paperwork to sign. Dissolution of the arrangement, transfer of the remaining funds, legal documentation that our marriage of convenience was officially concluded. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, watching me sign my name. "Once this is filed, the arrangement is over. Legally terminated." "I'm sure." She looked at Kim Shin. "And you're certain? The family will have questions if you stay married. Expectations." "Let them have expectations." He took my hand. "I'm not divorcing my wife, Mrs. Lee. Real or fake or whatever this started as. It's real now." She smiled. "I had a feeling you'd say that. Your grandmother would be pleased." After she left, Kim Shin pulled me into his arms. "So, Mrs. Shin, officially, legally, actually my wife now. How does it feel?" "Expensive. Do you know how much real wedding rings cost? The ones we got for show were cubic zirconia." "I'll buy you the biggest diamond in Manhattan." "I don't want a diamond. I want that painting we saw last week, the one by the Nigerian artist." "Done. What else do you want?" "The truth. I want to wake up tomorrow and have this still be real. I want to not be waiting for the other shoe to drop. I want to believe this is actually my life now." "It is. I promise you, Ngozi, this is real. We're real." "What about your family, your business, the complications you were trying to avoid?" "We'll handle them. Together. That's what real marriage is, handling complications together instead of avoiding them." My phone buzzed. Text from my mother in Lagos. "Ngozi, your brother got into university. Thank you for the money. Thank you for everything. We love you." I showed Kim Shin. He smiled. "You did that. Changed their lives. We did that. This arrangement, crazy as it was, it gave me the chance to actually help them. And to help yourself." "Yeah." I looked around the penthouse. Our home now, not his penthouse I was borrowing. "I never thought my life would look like this." "Better or worse than you imagined?" "Different. Scary. Complicated." I kissed him. "Perfect." "Even with the Korean Mafia boss thing?" "Especially with that. Makes dinner parties more interesting." He laughed. "You know I'm not actually." I know. Legitimate businessman. Import, export. Real estate. Very legal. Very cool." "You mock me." "I love you." "Yeah." He pulled me closer. "I love you too. Even if you did get pregnant 3 months after moving in and completely violated Clause 12B of our contract." I patted my barely showing belly. "In my defense, Clause 12B was poorly written, needed better legal review." "I'll inform my lawyers." "You do that." We stood there in the evening light, looking out at Manhattan, at the city where I'd come desperate and drowning, where I'd signed an insane contract with a dangerous stranger, where I'd fallen in love against all common sense. "Ngozi." "Yeah?" "Thank you for calling that number, for taking the chance, for staying even when you were scared. Thank you for the $3,000 tip, and for being someone worth staying for." The baby kicked, small flutter I was just starting to feel. Kim Shin's hand joined mine on my stomach, his eyes wondering. "We're really doing this," he whispered. "Real marriage, real baby, real life. We're really doing this. God help us both. Hey, if I survived 6 months of fake marriage with you, I can survive anything." Fair point. We kissed as the sun set over Manhattan, the city lights starting to appear one by one. Somewhere in Queens, my old studio apartment sat empty. Somewhere in Seoul, his family was probably gossiping about us. Somewhere in Lagos, my mother was probably thanking God and praying for us. And here, in this penthouse in this life I'd bought with desperation and fear, and $500,000, I was happier than I'd ever imagined possible. They say everyone has a price. That moment when desperation meets opportunity. Mine was $500,000 to marry a Korean mafia boss. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have known, was that the price I paid would buy me everything I'd ever wanted. Not the money, though, that helped. But love. Real, complicated, messy, perfect love. And honestly, best investment I ever made. So that's my story. How a fake marriage became the most real thing in my life. How a desperate decision led to actual happiness. How I went from drowning in debt to swimming in complicated, beautiful love. Kim Shin and I have been really married now for 2 years. Our daughter Amara, named after my best friend, just turned 1. We split time between New York and Seoul. I have my own design firm now. He's still doing his mysterious business things I don't ask too many questions about. His family eventually accepted me. Well, mostly. His mother still asks when we're giving Amara a sibling. His sisters have become my closest friends. His uncle pretends I don't exist, which honestly is fine by me. And sometimes late at night when I'm feeding the baby and Kim Shin is passed out on the couch because toddlers are exhausting, I think about that business card. That phone call. That moment I decided to take a chance on the most insane opportunity of my life. Would I do it again, knowing everything I know now? In a heartbeat. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you like this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more. And remember, sometimes the craziest decisions lead to the best outcomes. Just maybe don't marry strangers for money. I got lucky. You might not. If you enjoyed this story, please support us by subscribing to the channel.